Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? It's the Manbaer coming at you with the Friday night videos. Coming back with it. Gonna do a double header tonight. Especially, I was browsing my videos and I do a good little video watching here on the YouTubes. Especially, I want to shout out to Artsy Fartsy Fox. Man, her shorts are pretty amazing. Give her a view here. She's a new creator. Just want to get some shout outs to everybody out there tuning in on the channel. It's the fishing channel, coming up with That's Good Fishing. But no, as I was saying, watching today's videos, this one came across my channel, and this band actually was one of the bands that I used to freaking praise a lot, and they were kind of like hard to find in the wherever CDs or cassettes were sold. But this video is coming from a creator on YouTube by the name of Rock and Roll True Stories. I like him. I'm always covering him in the vein of like a reacts videos. But with that being said, let's get into the video. It's actually about a band called Acid Bath. It's a pretty strange name, but if you're into the heavy metal, if you're into the what gets me about this band, it's got a lot of melodic changes, and their freaking album art is definitely, it's off the hook. But no, without any delays, let's get into the video. Friday night rock and roll, Friday night videos, Manbaer TV, Manbaer radio, doesn't matter what it's called, it's coming from this mouth, baby. Let's go. Everybody knows that Jimmy Hart was the mouth of the South, but hey, better watch out. Somebody new might take the title. Let's check it out, man. Coming at you with the video without delay.
Hailing from Louisiana, Acid Bath was made up of vocalist Dax Riggs, guitarist Sammy Duet and Mike Sanchez, Audie Pittry on bass, and drummer Jimmy Kyle. While the press lumped the band...
I'm gonna lie, they kind of look a little bit like Cannibal Corpse, with like the hair and everything, kind of like the sludge metal prototypical look. But yeah, I mean, they pretty much all had that kind of look. Your Exoduses, your Obituaries, your Cannibal Corpse, those type of what they would consider like sludge metal or death metal, whatever kind. I just consider it hard rock, if you ask me. But let's go ahead and putz along with the video.
The band in with the scene in New Orleans. They were not a New Orleans band. Sammy Duet told Buzzbonger magazine, "Let me clarify, we're not a New Orleans band. Never was, never will be. No offense to anybody." While groups like I Hate God, Crowbar, and Soylent Green put New Orleans on the map as the epicenter of sludge.
Or as Beavis and Butthead would say, that's music that you'd get fat to. Also bands like Down and I believe Corrosion of Conformity as well. When it comes to this Coconut, I'm pretty much kind of like a rock and roll encyclopedia as well. But he pretty much netted most of the top 5 bands that were down there. Crowbar being one of the biggest. Definitely like the Crowbar.
Sludge metal. It was Acid Bath emerging from the remote depths of Louisiana's bayous that truly redefined the scene. In many ways, Acid Bath existed on the edge of the world, shaped by the isolation and wilderness of their surroundings. But Louisiana's dark history played a role too. Duet remarked, "There's a very dark vibe here. The first settlers used it as a penal colony. Southern Louisiana is where they'd stick their murderers, their rapists, and their mentally ill. It all seeped into the soil." Forming in the early 90s, Acid Bath forged a sound that defied easy classification. Their music collided heavy, doom-laden riffs with death metal ferocity, blues undertones.
And see, that's the thing about the band, with the melodic changes and all this. But they also had parts in the songs where the vocalist was able to harmonize as well. And you could definitely hear shades of this music and other artists. Kind of how they play and portray their music as well. They inspired a lot of groups.
Undertones and a flair for nightmarish visions and feverish tales. Over just 6 short years, the band released 2 studio albums that became cult favorites. But sadly, their run abruptly ended in 1997, following a tragic loss. While the band attempted to salvage what was left, they disbanded for the time being, but over the years their legend grew, thanks to the internet. revered by metal diehards and cited as an...
See, I didn't get into their tunes into the 90s. I actually heard from them like in the late 90s. I want to say 2000, maybe even 2001. I was hanging out with a friend by the name of Eric Roden, and I'd go over to his house, we'd chill, we'd play like whatever gaming console was at the system. But no, he was a pretty cool dude. Actually, he had like some skate videos, you know. He had the DVS, the one with Day One song in it. I can't really remember, but no. When we'd go to the skate park, he would definitely throw these guys down. He would have them in the tape player in his car, and we would just be like listening to them, getting pumped up and getting ready to skate. And you know, quite frankly, if it wasn't for Eric, I wouldn't know who this band were. And you know, yeah, it's just the way they switch up their sounds. They're definitely, you know, they're out of this world. I like them.
As an influence by artists like Slipknot's Corey Taylor,
yeah, I was about to say,
they remained a secret handshake amongst underground music fans, an iconic Louisiana band whose impact far outweighed their brief existence. But strangely enough, in the years that followed, their story is one that almost seems like it had been deliberately erased from the internet. If you're like me and you want to listen to your favorite band or...
Oh, it's not really just that. I'd like to think how Eric got his copy. He was probably able to burn it somewhere or have some... The thing is that if you knew the artists or if you knew the bands that you wanted to sought out for, there are ways to find them. I mean, you'd be able to find some of them at swap meets or, you know, Tower Records or, you know, FYI or, even Sam Goody back then. You know, this is back in the days when people bought cassettes, records, and CDs, back when there wasn't no internet to go out there and just point, click, and grab it. No, it was pretty much like a mission whenever you were out there. Even like when CDs and cassettes started to wane down, there were even like used aftermarkets for them. Like we had a place here in Fort Myers called the CD Warehouse, and no, they would even have some prized gems in them as well. But no, I still seek out music like in CDs when it comes to like flea masters and stuff. It wouldn't be uncommon to find like a Queensryche CD for about like $1.50, you know, talk them down to 50 cents. That's me. But no, I tend to ramble. But let's get back to the story.
Or show a friend or family member, you probably head to YouTube. Before 2020, if you did that with Acid Bath,
you would get clips.
You would get, this,
clips
or a bunch of videos of
duets
some really poor quality bootlegs,
covers.
Or my favorite, a guy literally recording a song that he's playing in his living room.
Good audio
That's
quality.
Fan dedication right there, and I'm not knocking them at all. It's great that fans are doing what they could to let people discover and hear Acid Bath's music. The reason for this was that their old label, Rotten Records, still thought it was 1996. Rotten wasn't happy with how much YouTube and other streaming platforms were paying. But finally in 2020, the band made their whole Rotten Records catalog available on Spotify and other streaming platforms. Since then, they've even put out a few clips, including some of their live shows on their own YouTube channel.
On Spotify now.
When I heard
like
I was
another
approved
band,
by one
like
name,
for instance,
I
coming
was
back to, like,
very
the
relieved.
Prize Gems,
I was
there was
ecstatic.
A band down here in Fort
I just
Myers
felt
called
like a ton of
RHC,
weight was lifted off my shoulders.
Respiration Has Ceased. They're also on Spotify, so if you ever get a chance,
Days
give
in
them
makes
a
every
chance.
winning moment
They
even
had an
more
LP
epic,
out
and
in
when the
mid-90s,
rewards members
and they
score
were a
big
band
time.
exactly,
No matter
they
why
were a
you're
band
here,
from Fort
win and
Myers, and they jammed. RHC. Domestic Violence is the name of the album.
The members in numerous interviews over the years have admitted that Rotten Records wasn't a good company to be signed to, and that the band towards the end of their career wanted to leave their label, but they were unable to do so. Acid Bath was made up of members from two earlier groups, Dark Carnival
most
and
bands
Golgotha.
are.
Acid
Like
Bath guitarist
like
Sammy
Korn
Dewey and bassist Adi Petrie were from
one
Dark Carnival,
section of the band
while
were
vocalist
in a
Dax
band
Riggs and
called
guitarist Mike
LAPD,
Sanchez,
and
as well
the
as drummer
other
Jimmy
section of the
Cowell
band
were from
were in a
Golgotha. Originally,
called
Acid
Sex
Bath
Art.
was named Golgotha, as frontman Dax Riggs revealed to an interviewer, and claimed that they only changed their name to Acid Bath after learning that a group in Europe had the same name. Many have long assumed that Acid Bath's name was inspired by
I've always thought about more like when you visualize it, some cat taking a freaking bath in acid. That definitely can't happen.
Infamous British acid bath serial killer from the 1940s. In reality, the origin was far less dramatic. They simply borrowed it from another recently defunct local band. The group's fondness for LSD also played a part in them choosing the name. All the members were from small towns, a short day trip outside of New Orleans, Houma, Morgan City, and Galliano. Dax Riggs told Anti-Gravity magazine, "I guess it's weirdly isolated and it's a good place to do something completely different in the way that the scene here is mainly folk and Cajun music. It's a weird place, but that's why I like it." He added to louder sound, it felt like we were the only people making any kind of extreme music where we were from. The band's sound was influenced by an eclectic roster of artists including Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, Celtic Frost, Simon and Garfunkel, Carcass, and Darkthrone. The band's sound mixed styles of sludge metal with death growls and gothic and grunge vocals, along with acoustic guitar and spoken word poetry. And the band's music was well known for featuring multiple tempo changes within one song. Acid Bath was also known, of course, for their
Exactly, and I think that's what set them, like, you know, apart for me, is like, wow, they freaking start going into heavy guitars, and then they, you know, it's like, the song would literally, like, it would be all over the place.
For controversial album artwork and song titles, something we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah,
if Acid Bath were going to get noticed, though, in their early days, they needed to break out beyond their rural origin.
Like
they started to play late-night shows in New Orleans, winning over local crowds, and they soon befriended local groups like I Hate God and Crowbar. With all the buzz growing, the band started to get the attention of Roadrunner Records. Now, this is the part of the story where I tell you that they got a label deal and things worked out great, but that's not the case here. Roadrunner reps flew down to New Orleans to take in a gig, and while Riggs told louder sound, word got out and the fans all went berserk. They completely destroyed the bar we were playing and broke a waitress's leg. Sammy Duet, meanwhile, revealed when answering fan questions, it was a train wreck. While Roadrunner passed on the band, they soon recorded a demo tape in 1994 titled Hymns of the Needle Freak. The demo was produced by their manager Keith Falgout, and it earned them the attention of several record labels. One was I Hate God's label, Century Media. But before signing, they asked their friends in I Hate God what their opinions were of Century Media, and they weren't exactly happy with the label. The only other label who showed interest in the group was independent label Rotten Records. Duet revealed that the members of Acid Bath pretty much blindly signed the contract, something they came to later regret. By the end of the year, they set up shop in Side One Studio in Metairie, Louisiana, to begin recording their debut album, When the Kite String Pops.
Yeah, see, that's the one with the clown. That art is actually, like, inspired by, like, a serial murderer. I probably can't say him on YouTube, but I'm pretty sure
Rotten Records issued a statement promoting the band that read, "The lure of Acid Bath is their ability to manipulate extremes without ever losing an ounce of emotion." Riggs was inspired by the comic books, specifically those authored by Frank Miller, Alan Moore, and Clive Barker.
I never knew that.
Their debut album, which was issued in 1994, soon became a cult classic, and it seemed to make more news for its album cover than the actual song.
That's what I thought.
The album's artwork featured a painting of a creepy clown that was done by serial killer John Wayne Gacy while he was on death row for the murder of over 30 young men. On the cover, you can see the words Pogo the Clown and a signature by J.W. Gacy. Duet revealed in an interview that the band couldn't agree on an album cover, and the artwork was presented to them by their label. They had no clue who the clown was until their label rep told them, and it turned out the artwork was acquired through a guy in Florida who strangely enough collected belongings from serial killers. Gacy would often perform at community events as Pogo the Clown, but not everybody in Acid Bath was happy with the album artwork, as Dax Riggs admitted to louder sound, "I hated it. I get that we had serial killer references and it made sense on the surface, but to associate it with a particular killer or incident wasn't a good thing for us."
You know, kind of like with the Marilyn Manson, how they used to say he, like, removed some ribs so he could facilitate himself. You know, it's like the artists in the 90s, you know, to mid to late 90s, they were all looking for that edge. You know, some of them had it in their sound, while some of them, you know, did it on stage. You know, a lot of them, you know, had to do it. They did it on all three with the art, you know, with their album art, stage presence, and their sound. You know, you had bangers like MRH, like Mushroom Head. and Slipknot, amongst a couple of them. I mean, I digress, but yeah.
Bad Vibes seemed to follow them on the road as well. The band attempted to play some shows in Canada, but were denied entry at the border as they'd forgotten some of their paperwork. Due to a louder sound. Then they found something they weren't happy with on our bus. Let's leave it at that, referring to the Canadian border guards. The album contained the only acid bath song that was ever made into a music video called Tababo Kumi, which is Swahili for Land of the White Cannibals.
Hey Meta, remind me where I parked my car.
You're parked in lot 19.
Remind yourself.
As you know, in the beginning I created heaven and earth, but then you guys got pretty good at making stuff too. So Papa's popping out to take it.
The last track on the album, Cassie Eats Cockroaches, the band used samples from 1971's A Clockwork Orange and 1986's David Lynch film Blue Velvet. Riggs' lyrics also had a dark undercurrent running through them, often focusing on drug use, death, mental illness, dark humor, paganism, nihilism, and just a general dislike of humankind.
I'd like to have a right down bed on the floor with the old in-out, real savage.
The group's debut album wasn't the only time they would go the controversial route with their artwork, as their 1994 extended release called Edits used artwork by serial killer Richard Ramirez, who was known as the Night Stalker, who terrorized Los Angeles and San Francisco in the mid-80s. The media, if you guys remember, stupidly claimed that the AC/DC song Night Prowler inspired his murders. The theme of controversial artwork followed them on their more melodic and final studio record, 1996's Pagan Terrorism Tactics. The album cover was designed by Dr. Jack Kevorkian, a controversial proponent of MAID. In 1997, during an interview with Chronicles of Chaos, Sanchez commented on the choice of artwork, stating, "The madness, chaos, and romance of Ramirez and Gacy was a tasteful ingredient to throw into our American..."
As some people at that time actually, praised Dr. Death. Kevorkian, helped a lot of people when you think of it, in them times, in the way, in them terms. You definitely can't speak about him like now. Most people don't even know who the hell that old dude is.
Dr. Jack Kevorkian featured on Pagan Terrorism Tactics, part of what's going on inside. There are those who praise him for giving them their freedom. Then there are those who are on the outside wanting your freedom to control.
There we go. Pagan Love Song. I was just talking about that. That's the Venus Blue, I think is also on this.
It was around this time that the band opened for an up-and-coming group called Slipknot, with Dewey recalling it was still very early days for them. At the time, they got a different singer. Corey hadn't joined yet. Clown was actually the promoter of the show. As I recall, they still had a lot of that theatricality, and Clown was there beating these beer kegs. They were just a local band, but a few years later I saw them on TV and I was like, wait, it's these guys. The group played their last gig with bassist Audie Pittrie on December 14th, 1996 at Texas Billiards, a club in Arlington that was actually owned by Pantera's Dimebag Darrell. Sadly, a few months later, on January 23rd, 1997, Pittrie and his parents were killed by a drunk driver who would run a stop sign.
And it's not surprising that you'd hear about like Dimebag or, members of Pantera or Corrosion of Conformity. It was all part of that Texarkana scene, Texas, Louisiana type gimmick.
Sign. Kelly Pittrie, Audie's brother, was the only one of 4 family members to survive the incident, escaping with only a broken rib and a mild neck fracture. The drunk driver, meanwhile, was convicted with 3 counts of vehicular manslaughter. Pittrie's bandmates were notified of the news when they attended a Cannibal Corpse concert. Due to a louder sound, as soon as we got back to the venue, our manager took us aside and told us we needed to talk. Audie's girlfriend called us and she just said, "He's gone. He's dead." I hung up and told the rest of the guys. We just couldn't believe it. It was a bad night. I've been friends with him since we were teenagers. Audie's the guy who made it all possible. The members ended up being the pallbearers at their departed bassist's funeral. Acid Bath did try to continue on for a bit longer, enlisting Audie's best friend Joseph Fontenot, and they played a few shows. But the difficulty of playing without Audie proved to be too much, and the band opted to call it a day following a less than stellar gig on April 25th, 1997 at the Shreveport Municipal Auditorium. The venue, which typically has a capacity of 3,000 people, only saw 500 people in attendance. At Riggs to a louder sound, it was a crushing end to it all, really.
This guy rented out this huge theater to have the last Acid Bath show in. It was us, Crowbar, Floodgate, and I believe there was one other band that might have opened. I hate to say it, but you know, after that show, I kind of knew that it was over at that point. Just the whole vibe that
He kind of looks like
I remember
follow
we
on
did not
TikTok.
get paid for that
He
show.
looks like Juggalo
because the guy that
Or
put the
Juggalo
show on
Jesus
rented this massive theater with this massive sound system and spent all this money, and when it came down to paying the bands,
It was probably peanuts.
there was no money to pay the bands because
Yeah, peanuts.
he
Here's Nathan.
he didn't really promote the show correctly, so there weren't enough people at that show to pay the bands. Yeah, I remember
They probably didn't hit it hard with the flyers or the street team or, you know, or the radio promos. You know, I'm a little bit older. I can remember when you'd hear on the radio or you'd hear Sunday, don't miss it. Cannibal Corpse, blah, 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 down in the Lee Civic Center. You know, yeah, I mean, it's all about turnout and advertisement. And clearly just by hearing this one dude, they didn't have none of it, you know. But let's get on with the story.
something about
Juggalo G. I'm not Juggalo G.
Kirk from Crowbar locking the guy in the room, and
Oh man, it sounds like he's about to piss off Crowbar. Kirk Weinstein is somebody you don't want to get angry. Let's check it out. I think,
threatening to get the money out of him, if you know what I mean.
But it's important to note
Broke him
that
up
in other
the
interviews, the
old-school
members
way.
stated that even if Petrie hadn't died, the group would have
Well,
likely
if they would
split
call him
anyway.
the wrestling
Briggs
business,
revealed to
giving him
Metal
a good old
Underground that
tune-up.
the slower and acoustic songs that he was coming up with
Giving him the
was
business.
not something his bandmates were particularly interested in pursuing. He told the publication, there were some problems on the second record. The Iggy Popish kind of vibes that I was sending out there, they weren't fully taken by some members of the band. In a separate interview, he was asked whether the bassist's death was an excuse to break up the band, to which he responded, there were definite vibes in the band that we were through. There were too many people around that didn't play in the band that were relying on us for their livelihood. I don't know if I could have stepped out. Maybe I could have broken away slowly. Audie was the one in the band that tied it all together. He was the one that dug heavy and melodic hippie type music. I felt creatively that
Kinda like
it wasn't
when Def
happening
Leppard
anymore.
went-
We
I
weren't
mean, they
hanging out
didn't
together,
replace
but
his
each had their own
drummer, but
camp
when
in the
they
band.
lost his
It wasn't an
arm,
excuse.
they
It was
definitely
just a
kinda, like,
reason.
fell off.
The band did begin writing material for what would have been their third LP
It's sad when you
that was
see a
tentatively
band
titled
fall
Killer
off.
Rat Poison. Here's what Dewey had to say about it.
A lot of people were asking about like a third album. Was there material for a third album? Like, did you have it? You know, there's things that
I
say
heard
you
it
have a
was,
third
but it was
album that
more
was
like a
distributed
best
a little
of,
bit, or
with,
you
like,
used the
live
riffs and
demos
Billboard.
and records.
I'm gonna clarify this once and for all.
All right,
There was.
Exclusive doesn't doom information.
I'll take it.
There was no
Iggy.
actual like
No, I
professional
think it was a
recording
demo.
of
The best
stuff
ofs.
for the third album. Like everybody's saying that it was recorded and we didn't put it out
No,
because of
no,
the record
no, it's a
company and
mismatch.
blah 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 blah. That's all. Basically, what I have, and I believe I am the only person that owns this, is that we used to practice in this house where I used to live in Thibodaux, Louisiana,
Yeah.
and at the time Goat Whore and Acid Bath was rehearsing there.
Spooky ass house.
And we would just, you know, come up with some ideas and record them, and they never really formed into songs per se.
Right.
But it's like just you could the beginnings of songs and just pieces that felt that they got put together and stuff. So I have like very rough like ghetto blaster recordings of those jam sessions, you know, and it never really developed into entire songs. It's just, you know.
Following the dissolution of the band, the members each went their separate ways, with Dewey continuing to play in several metal outfits, including joining Crowbar and starting his own group Goat Whore. But thanks to the advent of file-sharing sites, Acid Bath, while no longer active, saw their music reach a whole new audience. Dewey to a louder sound, while we were together, nobody really gave it. touring, we'd only do really well in Louisiana and the South. We go to New York City, there'd be 10 people there. Riggs added to louder sound. You'd think it would have taken a rest when we put the band to sleep. It never did. I still get people telling me we recorded their favorite albums. Adult actress Stormy Daniels even has our lyrics tattooed on her. It blows my mind. Riggs and guitarist Mike Sanchez played together in Agents of Oblivion, releasing one album in the year 2000.
Not the Agents of Oblivion. Sounds like Orgy.
Big Flex 5, con 5 hojas recubiertas de titanio.
All he had he gave. Hey, fishing. What are you doing?
Riggs then went on to form the outfit Dead Boy and the Elephant Men that actually played high-profile gigs like Austin City Limits and Lollapalooza, even being compared to the White Stripes. But the band ended after just a few short years, and Riggs turned his attention to a solo career and even withdrew from the public eye for nearly a decade. For years, the question of an acid bath reunion would be brought up in interviews with the former members. Rumors even circulated that the band was reuniting without Riggs, who apparently wasn't interested in revisiting his past, with Slipknot's Corey Taylor being rumored to be filling in for him. But those rumors were just that. Then in 2024, Riggs finally released new music, and in October of that year, Sick New World Festival announced its lineup, and to many people's surprise, Acid Bath were on the bill. So what happened? Ironically, it was another death that partly inspired the reunion. Tommy Viator, who had played drums in Sammy and Audie's earlier band Dark Carnival and joined Acid Bath as their keyboard player for the last few months of their existence, had passed away in May of last year. Around the same time, Dewey was asked by the people planning Sick New World Festival if he'd ever consider reuniting Acid Bath. With him telling Louder Sound, it just put everything in perspective. I was like, if we're going to do it, we should do it now while everyone is still around. Riggs added in the same interview, I kind of just went berserk and decided to go for it. It felt totally natural. It's not as painful as every moment was after Audie passed. The reunited lineup features Dewey, Riggs, and Sanchez, with Goatwhore drummer Zach Simmons filling in for original drummer Jim Kyle. On bass guitar is Shane Wesley, who also plays in Crowbar. Funny enough, Sick New World Festival ended up being cancelled, but Acid Bath are still scheduled to play a bunch of other festivals and shows later this year. As for new music, Dewey added that he'd be open to it, but he would be hesitant to call it Acid Bath. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories.
Give us both a like. Yo, yo. Check you later.